everyone. I'm Mateusz. I worked in shipbuilding as a ship designer for 10 years, and recently I joined Naval Architect to help them in their product development. Basically, what we would like to show you here today, we'd like to demonstrate the power of these integrated properties that Naval Architect stores in addition to just geometrical parameters. We'd like to show you how to display these parameters using the Stylesheets in Naval Architect. And the third thing is that the reporting function, so basically extracting information from Naval Architect in an Excel format. When you log into your Naval Architect platform, you will see this screen, which is a project browser, let's say, or a project list. You open your organization, and then you will see a list of projects accessible for you. And in our case, we will work on this RoPax ferry. I've created a separate branch for that webinar so that we can mess around without having a direct impact on the mainstream of the project. So we open the webinar branch, and we can see our RoPax vessel as a 3D model. This is already quite advanced, so we won't be starting from scratch today. Today we will work on the workflow over the tank plan, because this is a good example how you can utilize the properties built in Naval Architect platform for increasing your efficiency. So as we talk about the tank plan, we would probably want to see the double bottom, which is like the space where you have the largest numbers of tanks, of separate tanks in the vessel. And we have prepared the geometry here, but maybe first let's have a short look at the navigation in the editor. Where you have already seen, I changed the views. It was here. So this is a project browser. You can access it by clicking a hamburger menu or the search bar. You can use the search bar to find certain items in the project browser. First you have your views, 3D views, 2D views, also the deck plans. Later in the project browser, you will see your classification systems, and this is something that we will cover in the future in some other webinar. Today we will certainly work with types, and types in short are let's say types of the geometry that you'd like to have in your model. So if you have a wall, you can say that this is a bulkhead. So the type of this wall is a bulkhead, and it can have certain set of properties that are specific to this type. So to the wall type. The same for the spaces. It can be either a compartment, or you can be more specific. You can say that the type of this compartment is a tank or it is a room, and a different set of properties would follow. After that, we have the reports. So this is this way of extracting the information from the Naval Architect model to the outside. So download the tables in Excel. And style sheets. Style sheets are the ways to display your information in the model. So how do you want to see it? Currently, let's say the default style is applied here, so all the walls are black, and we don't have spaces yet. We'll do that in a moment. On the right hand side, you have a main menu, saving function, undo, redo, deleting geometry or deleting the different objects in the model, and the main menu with access to different editors. We have covered the editors in the previous webinars. This time we will use a space editor to create our spaces. And I think we can start from creating spaces. As I said, we have prepared the geometry, so we have basically drawn the walls, the bulkheads, in a double bottom view, so in the double bottom plan view. So this divides our double bottom into separate pieces of volume. But we to fully utilize the capabilities of Naval Architect, we have to show the editor that these are actual spaces and that we want to do something with these pieces of the volume in between the walls. So to do that, we need to create spaces, and for that we select the space editor, and to show the editor that we want a space in certain location, we click a hint point, and the editor selects the boundaries that are most probably the boundaries of our space. And for the more simple geometries, it works fully automatically, so you don't have to help the software to select the correct boundaries. In some cases, it might require certain attention from the user. In this case, we would go through all the volumes that we have created by drawing bulkheads, and we will assign them as spaces. So it's always clicking in the middle and clicking create. And what is done here, the editor creates a space in each place that we clicked create, and it already knows that there is certain geometry that we will deal with later. By intention, I'm leaving these more complicated spaces as the last ones, because this will require certain attention from us. I will only create the all remaining spaces here. Yeah, they are all displayed in random colors. It looks nice, but it might not be very handy for later, let's say, maybe work with our tank plan. But for that reason, we have the style sheets, which will help us to make it look more professional. Here, it's a nice way to display that we should do something about these spaces later. Yes, we are almost done. The forepeak tank left. Yes, we got it. Ah, sorry. Wrong. Yes, here we have this more complicated spaces. And here, as we see, the editor, every time we click, it tries to select all the boundaries that it sees around, but in some cases, for some of these boundaries haven't been detected, so we have to help it, and we can see that the ones that have been detected or have been selected by us manually are highlighted in blue, and the ones that are not yet selected are gray, and there are two more to be selected. If I select in a certain spot where I could have 3 different molded forms, so 3 different bulkheads in mind, it gives me a hint and asks me to select one of these. And in this case, this was this one. And yeah, that's what I've done here. I clicked another time, and I need to repeat the selection process, but it's quick, so one moment. Yes, and the last one. Yes, so we have all the boundaries selected. We can also highlight them more when we hover on a certain geometry here on the right side. But all of this seems to be selected, so we click Create, and the large space appears around these central tanks. And the reason why we have such a dense, let's say, such a density of different tanks here is that on the top of that, tank top, over this double bottom space, there are two symmetrical engine rooms. So as we have the engine rooms here, we probably might need many different tanks to collect leakages and to collect certain fluids results of work of our engine room, and we will cover that later in the webinar. We will create these tanks with specific names and specific purpose. Yes, we have everything selected for the other tank. We go create. Oh, there is some, probably I haven't select one of these boundaries here. And it, yeah, if it's not fully bounded, there is no clear situation for the editor, and it says that it couldn't determine the space that I had in mind. But of course I can do it once more, and now make sure that everything has been selected here around. It looks like it has been, so yeah, here it goes. Yes, so we have our spaces. So the editor knows that we will that we plan to do something about our geometry in between the bulkheads here. When we click it, we now see that this is a space and nothing else. So this is just an entity in the editor. And to be more specific and to say what kind of space is that, we need to select a type. And to do that, we go here. In the search bar, we can unfold our types tree. So we have different types of geometry here. So a common type, which is a very general. We can have molded forms. So we can specify a hull, bulkhead, or deck, which doesn't make sense because we have selected a volume. But we can also have spaces here, and more specific type is a compartment, and more specific type would be a room. But in this case, we don't need a room here, it's a tank. So to create our custom type of geometry in Naval Architect, we have to go to the type editor. We unfold it as we did for when in the properties when we were selecting the type, and in the parent type, which is a compartment here, we click plus, and now we can create our custom type. And our custom type will be a tank. And we can add a description here. So tank is a compartment to store liquids, in this case. So this is a more specific type of the compartment. This description is not necessary, not maybe, it's not necessary, but we can add it always. And now what happened here, our type has inherited the properties from the compartment type. So there is a compartment number, that's clear, a function of a compartment that will be useful later, some designation, and a planning status. So there are four properties that have been inherited from the parent types. So as we have it, we can go to our double bottom, and now we can select for our spaces. We can select the certain type. There was a misclick, but I didn't want it to be a general compartment. I rather want it to be specifically a tank. Yeah, so now when we click it, we know that this space here in the aft is a tank. And we don't have to do it separately for each and every volume. Sorry, I clicked something. Yeah. We can select more geometries at once with keeping a control key. And then we can edit properties or select types of these objects all at once. And that's what we will do. I select them with a control key. I can see a list of selected objects here on the right side in the properties menu. And now I go for common, space, compartment, tank. So specifically, I want them to be tanks. And now I will go zoom in to select this more dense area with smaller tanks below the engine room. Sometimes when I click in the wrong place, it gives me a drop-down menu. This works the same as it worked for the molded form. So if the editor doesn't know what we actually wanted to click, it gives us a hint, it gives us a drop down to select. And when we hover on certain items, we can see what has been detected. Yes, we go for tank. So all of these spaces have been assigned as tanks, and now the editor knows that we are planning to add some properties here which will be specific to the tank. We have a compartment number, function, designation, and planning status currently. I see that I forgot about two spaces here, very important, crossover tanks. So let's make them here. One crossover per engine room. Yes, and now we will also select them to be a tank type. Of course, we could make a specific type of a tank, which would be a crossover tank in this case, and assign different set of properties to that. But in this case, let's keep it simple and keep it as a tank. Okay, but yeah, we have a certain set of properties, but this is no different than the compartment type. So we'd like to have some custom properties probably here, and that's what we will do now. So we go to the type editor again. We select our previously created tank type, and we'd like to see some more properties for tank type. One of the properties that is important is obviously a volume. So we click Add Property. We select a group of properties that it belongs to. In this example, we have only one group, general, for now. We call it a volume. We don't need a description. It's quite clear. And here we select a data type. It can be different data types. We'll make them in a moment. In this example, we'll need a system data type. What does it mean? It means that we don't want to calculate this volume as we would normally do in AutoCAD by approximating on a flat drawing and trying to calculate what will be the volume of this tank in this quite complicated geometry of double bottom. We want to take this property from our system because it's already known by the 5D model what is the actual volume of this space. So we select a system property and we select a volume. There are also other properties like areas of ceiling, walls, floor, also center of volume, which we will use in a moment. But in this case, we need a volume because it's a volume. Yes. So this is, let's assume this is a general property. Let's now maybe what might be also interesting for us for a tank plan drawing is the COG, or center of volume. In this case, it's almost the same value. So we will use the system property set center of volume now, but let's have it in another group. Let's say this is a geometry group. We created a group. It appeared here with a bold font, and now we can make a property and add it to the geometry group. And this will be our COG in 3 dimensions. Let's start from X dimension. And again, we select a system property and we go for volume center X. It will be close to our COG. And the same we do for the other dimensions. COGY, it's a system property, and it's center of volume at Y, and the same for Z. So we have our COG. What's also interesting for a tank, it might be the contents. What do we store in this tank? What kind of liquid is stored there? So we add another property. Let's call it a general property. Let's call it contents. Yes. And the data type here will be, now system doesn't know what do we want to store in a tank, so we have to assign a certain fluid to, or certain liquid to a tank. So we go for option property. And now we can create a list of options, because that list of cargoes, list of liquids that we will have in our tanks is limited to certain sets, so we can predefine this set to keep it in correct order. And yeah, for the double bottom, what could we have there? For obviously we will have a sea water, because the ballast tanks will be filled with seawater. We can have marine diesel oil. Let's have it like MDO, marine diesel oil in short. Of course, it won't be allowed to store marine diesel oil in a double bottom, but we can have some leakage tanks there, and that's what we will do. We can have a bilge water tanks. That's perfectly fine. Bilge water, and let's differentiate a clean bilge from a dirty bilge. So yeah, after and before the separation process, we can have also some kind of a lubrication oil leakage. So we add lubrication oil here as an option for liquids. And what else? I'm looking at my script here. Maybe, yeah, that's important. Urea for the exhaust gas cleaning system. That's very common to store this liquid in a double bottom right now. And maybe also some waste oil, some oil that has been already used and cannot be used anymore and filtered anymore. Yeah, and probably that's it. It's not that we have to add everything now. We can always modify this list, but for now it's okay. And the last thing that we have to set here is if we want this value to be set at an item, so selected for each tag individually, or we want to specify some certain liquid type by default, and to have it fixed for every tank. But in this case, of course, we want to set it at an item. Yeah, so this is a general property, and I think now maybe this volume property is more not it's more about the geometry, not about the general. Let's move it to geometrical properties. It will jump into the geometry group. Do we need anything else? Yeah, for the tanks, maybe we would need some information about systems that are applied in certain tanks. So let's make another group, which will be systems. And in this simple example, we will have two systems here. Let's assume that we can have a tank heating system, something that I am personally very familiar with. I work with that a lot in my career. So the tank heating system, and in this case, let's limit ourselves to saying, do we have or not the tank heating system in this tank? So this will be a Boolean value in this case. So we only say yes or no. Of course, we could add any other set of properties that would characterize our tank heating system. So for now, for the simple example, let's keep it like that. So we have a tank heating system, yes or no. And let's have another one in the systems, which is also very common for the tank arrangements. Let's say sounding system. Yeah, sounding system. In here, we could also have a Boolean yes or no, but for the sounding system, even in a simple example, we can say that we have at least like two types of sounding, two general types of sounding systems. So it will be either manual or remote. Sounding system, and we of course click set at an item because we want it to be set at an item. Yes, and that's basically it. We have our tank type more specific now. It's different than the room type, which is predefined here with all this HVAC system properties, other system properties. Different things are interesting in terms of rooms when you look at the geometry. Our tank is now specific to the tank application. And when we go back to our double bottom, we can now assign these properties to our tanks. One moment. Yeah, so let's now select all the ballast tanks. I'd say that most of these tanks in the double bottom will be ballast tanks anyway. I'm leaving this free here because they will be a sewage tanks. Above this space here in the model, we have some kind of a sanitary space that we will use, and we will use these tanks as a sewage tanks. And that reminds me about the one of cargoes that I forgot about, which is the sewage. We will add it later. So for now, we have selected all the tanks that we are supposed to have as ballast tanks, and we just go for function and we select ballast tank. And by intention, I will not fill in all the other properties like contents that we added, the tank heating system, sounding system. By intention, I'm leaving this for later because I will show you the smart way to fill in this information all in once. Of course, when I have these tanks already selected, it would be still easy, but we can do it in a smart way. So to present it, I will leave them. I will leave them without this selection at this point. And now we have two symmetrical engine rooms above, so we can assign this tank symmetrically. So we can say that both tanks symmetrically here. Let's have them as bilge tanks. So the type of the tank will be a storage tank in this case, and the contents will be dirty bilge. What else do we need to specify here? Is the tank heating system needed? Probably not. And the sounding system, as this is a bilge, let's have a remote sounding system here. Okay, so we have assigned our first 2 tanks. Let's go for another 2. We go for another storage tanks, and now we will store a clean bilge. Let's keep one close to another. We are not filling in the compartment number here because maybe let's save time on that, but yeah, it's of course an important information for later. Once we have done that, this information will be available for anyone working in the project. So if someone then makes a space identification plan after we have done our tank plan, they wouldn't need to fill in the compartment numbers again. They have it already in their model. So that's a huge advantage. For a dirty bilge, we don't need tank heating, and let's have remote sounding as well. And we have these 2 guys here, and these are the crossover tanks. Function is a crossover tank, and probably seawater there. No tank heating, and probably manual sounding is more than enough because they are always filled in. As you can notice, as there is many tanks, it might be difficult to later to say which tanks have been filled in with information or taken care of, and which tanks are not yet assigned, like this one or this one. They have no function, they have no contents whatsoever. So to display properties in Naval Architect model, so to see it maybe better than only in a random colors, we use style sheets, and that's what we will do right now. And we will do we will create a new style sheet. There is no style sheet currently in this project. Let's call it a tank plan style sheet. And now we can see our style sheet. And style sheet works in a way that you apply certain rules, and these rules determine how our geometry will be displayed. You can edit default styles, so you can say how the geometry is displayed by default. We won't do it now because the default is black molded forms and colorful compartments. It's good. We will go for a new rule here. And let's have the first rule for the tanks we have already prepared. First of all, you select what actual type of geometry this rule that you are creating applies to. So we have, of course, we work on tanks, so we select a tank in this case. Then we have this quantifier that would say if you create more conditions than one, you can say that all of these conditions have to be applied to has to be met to apply certain rule, or any of these conditions has to be met to apply this rule, or none of these conditions. But in this case, we will have only a single condition to keep it short in time, and we leave it as all off. It doesn't matter. So we create a condition, and our condition on which we will differentiate our tanks will be a tank function. So we have basically 4 functions. Will be a ballast tank, will be a storage tank, a leakage tank, and a crossover tank. We have 4 functions, so we select the function, and the first tanks we have created were storage tanks. So we go for a storage tank. And now what I have done is that I say that the storage tanks, or the tanks that have function storage tank, should be styled in this way. Let's first set a color. So the storage tank, let's have it like, I don't know, kind of a magenta, bluish color. It doesn't matter. yeah, I clicked apply, but I want also to have some label for such tanks. So let's have a ST tank, which is short for storage tank. And we could also select line type, which doesn't really make sense for the space because it's a space. It's not drawn with lines. It could make more sense for the bulkheads, for example. But let's say we specify the color how this should be displayed, and we specify the label. We click apply, and I think we can have a look. But before we can see these styles applied to certain view, we have to tell the editor that it should use this certain style sheet for this certain view. And for that reason, we need to click edit for the double bottom view. And in the graphics tab, we select our style sheet. Now it reloads, because it has to apply this style to our view. And we can see the view, and you can see that the storage tanks have been already painted in this bluish magenta color that we have selected, and they have a label ST tank as we wanted. We don't have a rule for a crossover tank yet, so despite they are assigned, they have no label and no special color, so we continue on creating our styles. So we add another rule, which will also apply to our tank type. Yes, and again we will base on our function. It could be also anything like contents. It could be, I don't know, volume, if we want to show tanks of certain volume as in different color or label them differently. But yeah, in this case, function is perfectly fine. And our tanks were crossover tanks. So we click apply, and now we can select a certain color for crossover tanks. Let's have them in some dark grayish color, because this is not a real tank. It's a kind of a hydraulic structure, and let's call them cross in short. Yeah, we won't reload the view now. Let's create rules for the remaining two types of tanks that we have left. So we go for compartment tank again, and we create a rule based on our function, and our function will be leakage collecting tank. So for all the oily liquids that we want to have in the double bottom, it is necessary that they are not considered full all times, so they are only used temporarily, and the leakages or the liquid is pumped out. This is due to environmental requirements. We don't want to release any oils in case of some small, let's say, incidents when the double bottom is penetrated by rocks or something. So yeah, so only oily tanks that are in our double bottom are leakage collecting tanks. Yes, so we click apply, and we will have, for as they are oily, let's have some kind of pink or, I don't know, violet color. There, we probably, I forgot to label them. Let's have them labeled leak for short, so that for the classification society later, when they check our tank plan drawing, they immediately see that this is a leakage tank. This is not a standard storage tank, so everything is fine. And the last type we had is the ballast tank. So we go for space, compartment tank as always, so because it applies to our tanks. We select function, and we select ballast tank. Go for apply, and our ballast tanks, let's have them in this default blue, dark blue color. and BW as a ballast water. Okay, so our style sheet is ready. It could be, of course, we could add another set of rules to differentiate the tanks more than that. But as we have limited time, let's keep it like that. So we go for not this one. We'll load the mine deck right now. We don't. Yeah, it's not needed now. We go to the double bottom. Back to the double bottom. Yes, and the tanks that have been already assigned, these are colored in the way we wanted. Now there is some problem with. Yes, so they are colored as we wanted, and the tanks that haven't been assigned with specific properties are still in this random colors. So let's do it. Let's finalize it. So we select them symmetrically. We have two tanks here. Let's say, for example, that these were I don't know, leakage collecting tanks in this case, and what we do collect here is I don't know, waste oil, let's say. And for the waste oil, we probably don't need tank heating. It should be easy to pump it out. And let's have a manual sounding here. Here, symmetrically, let's have, for example, storage tanks, but for sludge, which we haven't defined yet. So for now, let's use, I don't know, urea. And now we can go to our type definition and add this missing cargoes, because there are two cargoes missing, which are first the sludge and another one is sewage. So the two nicest cargoes left till the end. Click apply. They will be accessible now from the double bottom. Yeah, so we have a leakage tank. Let's make these sludge tanks, for example. This is a storage tank, and the cargo is sludge. And for sludge, we'll probably have some heating system, at least some electrical heater to allow to pump it out easily after it's collected. And let's have manual sounding here. What's left? Maybe these two tanks. It's a problem with selection. Yes, so the function will be a leakage collecting tank in this case, because we would like to have, let's say, MDO leakage collected here, and no tank heating, and let's say remote sounding in case of our engine system requires some information on how much the MDO leakage tanks are filled. And the same kind of leakage collecting tank for our lubricating oil here, with no heating probably, and with some remote sounding system. And the last ones here, let's have them also as leakage collecting tanks, and let's have a waste oil there. no tank heating, and remote sounding. Let's do it like that. It doesn't matter really. Here we have our tanks that were supposed to be sewage tanks. It's a storage tank in this case. Do we need tank heating? Probably it's not necessary unless we go to some Arctic regions. And let's have a remote sounding. We don't want them to be overfilled or something. And then we in the sanitary for the sanitary devices, they would also produce some kind of sludge that we need to collect when they filter the sewage. So we have a storage tank for this sludge, and then let's have tank heating, some small tank heating there, and maybe remote sounding in this case. Yes. So what we have done, we have assigned all the properties to these tanks, and now all these properties are present. We can take a look, so we can always access this information in this simple way. We can always select more tanks at once, and we will see all the properties that are the same for each of these tanks that we have selected. For the ballast tanks, as a reminder, we haven't filled in all the information, but this is by intention. We will now go to the last feature that we would like to present here, which are the reports. So reports are the way to access all this information that we have currently filled in our model. So yeah, let's make a report. Making a tank plan, you probably would expect it to have some kind of a table with all the tanks listed, with all the information about the tanks and volumes, all other geometrical information, some tank number. In this case, we haven't specified the compartment number, but also the sounding systems, maybe also the information about tank heating systems applied. So we will create such a table using a report function. So let's call it a tank plan table. We select the type to which we want to make this report. We want it to be specifically created for tanks, but it could be also any other more general type. And now we select the properties that we are interested in. I will skip the compartment number because we haven't filled it in this case, but for sure we will be interested in a function, we will be interested in the contents. What else? Volume, the COG in this case, and also the two systems that we have specified. Yes, it's good to add them in an order that we want them to be displayed in a table, column by column. Of course, you can change the order of columns later, but it's handy to have it correct at the first site. Yeah, so we have a list of our tanks, and all the tanks that are not ballast tanks are provided with all the information that we have been selecting in the model. For every tank, no matter what it is, all the geometrical information is filled up automatically from the system, so we know perfectly the volume, the COG in each direction, so we don't have to go back to calculate it once, and we don't have to calculate each tank separately, so it goes automatically. So, and it also, which I will show you in the moment, this also updates when you make an update in your geometry. I will do that in the moment, but for now, let's fill in the missing information in the ballast tanks. And for this, I will show you the first function of this reports, so of this reports table. We for any column, we can click here to see the menu. You can add or create a column on the left, on the right. You can edit the column, you can delete the column. In this case, we want to edit it. And what we want to do is we want to group the data based on this column. So we will group it based on the tank function or compartment function. We click update, and what we will receive is our 4 types of tanks that we have created. And now we can easily click this row, and we have all the ballast tanks selected all together. So we can see here in the bottom, we have all the ballast tanks selected. And now we can edit properties of all these ballast tanks at once. So we don't need a tank heating system for the ballast tanks in this case. Let's have manual sounding by default. And maybe the contents, of course, will be seawater. Yes. So now we can display switch off the grouping, and we will get back to the full list of tanks one by one. I have noticed that we had been missing some information. For example, for this storage tank for sludge, I can see that it is missing some information here. Remote sounding, the sounding method was not specified. Let's specify it. This table also gives you a nice overview of all the properties that have been assigned to certain types. I can see 2 gaps here as well. So some kind of leakage collecting tank, which was the lubricating oil tank, is missing some information on the sounding as well. So I probably missed that while working in the editor. And these urea storage tanks are also missing this information. So let's make it like we did before with the ballast tanks. Of course, we could. These are only 2 entities, but yeah, let's be lazy and group it by the liquid. And now we can fill in this information here automatically in 2 tanks at once. So. Let's have some tank heating system for urea. It's often required to keep it at certain set of temperatures. And let's have remote sounding, so for the engine system, so that it knows it can operate with exhaust gas cleaning. Yeah, let's remove the grouping again. And that's basically it. So it eases the way you can fill in or modify the information about your tanks in this case, but it could be anything. It could be a room, and you can supply information about the HVAC system or supply the information about the other systems that are applied in certain rooms. It really helps in planning and in estimating costs of the project when you know exactly how many, for example, AC units or individual AC units you will need to apply for a certain project. You can do it at a very early stage because it doesn't require much more work than working in AutoCAD. By the way, we have shown this in one of our videos. Feel free to check it out. It's a nice video with a nice soundtrack. It's good to see. But anyways, this was the grouping function, and we have another function that is very handy in when you want to, especially when you want to modify something. So let's say you want to, you'll get an information, or you will agree with your ship owner, or you will put this information to your ship specification, or discover it, which also happens that all your ballast tanks that are over 100 cubic meters in volume should be with remote sounding. because they are large, and yeah, it's important for the safety of the vessel. So all the ballast tanks over 100 cubics needs to be with remote sounding. And now, normally you would go to your tank plan drawing, you'd go to the table and change it manually one by one. But first you would have to either calculate this volume or check it somehow. So here it's quite simple because we have filters. Now we can go for filtering the data. In this case, we also have a quantifier which works the same as for conditions that we add for the style sheets. So in this case, we will have only we will have two conditions basically. So we want to filter all the ballast tanks because it concerns ballast tanks in this case. So we select property ballast tanks. And another condition is that this ballast tanks needs to have volume over certain value, which is 100 cubics in this case. So we apply this filter, and we have all these 6 tanks that meet these conditions listed here. So we can easily change this information manually one by one, like this. Remote, remote, remote. But that's also a pretty, maybe a bit more advanced function. That's it's not advanced. We have covered it already. We can also, together with a filter, we can also apply grouping. So if we will apply grouping based not on contents but on function, we will see these ballast tanks all together, or probably I've done something wrong because it filtered out my ballast tanks in this case. So probably I've done something wrong. Let's go back. Let's filter it again. Volume over 100. Yeah, we've got it. We've got them all. Now, we got the 6 tanks selected, so the 6 tanks that are over 100 in volume, and now we can change the sounding system. As you can see, as I changed the sounding system for one of them, it doesn't say that they have all manual sounding right now. It says that you have selected now because they have different values. We want them all to be with remote sounding. And now we will switch off our filter. I haven't switched it off. Yes, and I would probably switch off grouping right now. Or switch on better. Let's see our double bottom. For the ballast tanks, this one is over 130 in volume, and this has already a remote sounding signed in. This one is probably, yeah, it's also over, but this one will be below 100. It's 51, 52 cubic meters, and it stays with manual sounding. Yeah, and now for what we can do as well with our reports is that we can download the information in an Excel format. And to do that, we just click download right here. Yeah, and then it goes to our download format. It's in Excel format with the headings, so you can do further work on that. Of if you need later in the later stages of design to put this data on some kind of AutoCAD drawing, then you can do that by importing the Excel table. Yes, so that's basically it. That's what we wanted to show you, that these are the new functions or the functions that have been recently improved, and they allow you to work with the 5D model, so with this fourth dimension, with the information that is present in the model. In addition to the geometry, so you have the geometrical properties calculated automatically. No need to manually calculate the volumes and COGs anymore. Especially in this early stages, it will be very, very handy to have such a tool. There are properties that you can fully customize to your needs. It's only a tank plan example, but you can probably think about many other applications. And that's what we wanted to show you. And we will be happy to hear your questions now and then to hear your opinion. So feel free to ask us anything. We will try to be helpful and reply.